Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Hamza Foy with Ihya 502 podcast. This episode is going to replace the usual Suhba roundtable format. I wanted to expand on some points that were mentioned at a recent panel discussion at the University of Louisville. The local Muslim Student Association hosted a number of reverts from the community, including myself, to talk about our embracing Islam, how we have maintained our faith and practice, and how we have integrated into the community. As is sometimes the case with public speaking opportunities, you have time to reflect afterwards on what you have said. People are coming to you with bits and pieces, with recordings to share, and you start to realize that there are some places where we could have explained ourselves better, elaborated on our points, and in general just expand on what we had a chance to say. There are 2 points that I'm going to talk about in this recording. The first being the similarities between reverts and those who are born Muslim. The second being culture in general. One of the questions that the moderator asked those of us reverts who were on the panel, she asked, what is one thing you would like to tell or explain to those who are not reverts? You got a number of different answers. I briefly talked about the fact that those of us who are reverts have certain practical advice, certain hikmah. Hikmah roughly translates in English to wisdom. We have certain pieces of advice that we can impart to those who are born Muslim. In particular, I have found in my recent years a number of those who are born Muslim, but for one reason or another, they have some deficiency in their practice or in their faith, or they feel like they're not being consistent Muslims. A number of those people have come to me for advice. I find that those of us who reverted to Islam, especially those who reverted in their adolescence or adult years, we have had to go through that critical self-inventory. We've had to take into account certain behaviors we have, certain habits that we have molded into our daily life, and we've had to be critical with ourselves in accepting that there are certain behaviors and habits that we need to leave off, especially upon becoming Muslim, right? So I'll give you a personal example. In this panel discussion, I talked briefly about the fact that my mother's side of the family, they're from Appalachia, Eastern Kentucky, mountains up in Eastern Kentucky, and there are certain behaviors that we treat as this is always the way we have been. This is always the way we have behaved. But upon becoming Muslim, I realized, okay, there's certain behaviors that I'm going to have to abstain from. In particular, and I say this jokingly, but a lot of us folks out in Eastern Kentucky, we have what are called sailor's tongue or sailor's mouth. That's kind of an idiomatic expression indicating that we're prone to cussing. Cussing in just like everyday conversation, right? We're kind of the rough, tough, farmers or miners, we're coarse in our language. Now, of course, upon becoming Muslim, I was real with myself, and I I told myself, okay, this Hamza, this is something that we can no longer do. This is something that is deemed prohibited by God. And so, there was that slow process of working that out of my system, so to speak. I think a number of Muslims realize that those of us who reverted were very pragmatic, we're very realistic about what it takes to quit certain habits, to quit certain behaviors. It's sometimes it's harder to leave off a habit or leave off a behavior than it is to take on new ones, right? And those of us who reverted to Islam, we know, I'm going to kind of use some slang here, but we've been through the grind of becoming better people. Once again, of becoming better people in the sense that we're taking on new behaviors, new habits, new virtues, and we're leaving off bad behaviors, bad habits, bad vices. And we're very realistic in that. In the panel discussion, I kind of brought up the fact that, as reverts, we're realistic, and we know that it's very difficult, and seldom does it happen that you quit something, quote unquote, cold turkey. Once again, I love my English language. I love the idioms, so I tend to kind of bring them out. When you hear somebody say quitting cold turkey, they're meaning that you're going to quit something suddenly and without at all returning to it. Those of us who reverted to Islam, we know how unrealistic that is to expect somebody to quit, especially if it's not just one bad behavior, one bad habit, but multiple, right? It's very unrealistic to expect somebody to quit all of that cold turkey. And I think that the Muslims who have been brave enough, have been, conscientious with themselves, and have come to us reverts for advice, I think a number of them come to us for advice because they know that we're going to be realistic, right? SubhanAllah, just think about this. If we've been through the same thing together, I can give you advice. But if I've not been through the same thing as you're going through, all I can offer you is perspective. Let me break it down for you. If person A has not been through a situation that person B has been through, then all person A can do is just imagine. It's a figment of his or her imagination. Well, if I was in this situation, I would probably do this. Person A has no context. They don't know the step-by-step how to go through that situation. So all they can offer you is perspective. But let's say person A has been through the grind, as they say. And just to explain this little bit of slang for the older folks, much love to you. When somebody says they've been through the grind, it's indicating that they've been through a certain experience. Usually, what's implied is it's been like a hard or severe experience. But anyways, if person A has been through the grind, if they have been through that situation from start, middle to end of the situation, and then person B goes through that same situation, person A can offer practical, realistic advice. They can literally give you directions. But if they've not been through that experience, they're only offering you perspective. So I know a number of born Muslims have reached out to me, and through the things that they say to me, they're implying that they're implying that, Brother Hamza or, Brother Sa'il Khair or Sister Sakina, and, Sa'il Khair and Sakina, they're fellow reverts in this community. We know that you've been through this experience. So I know that you can give me good, sound, practical advice. There's a number of, I think it's important to be candid, obviously without, mentioning names, but, there's a number of Muslims who are born Muslim, and for one reason or another, perhaps their parents didn't do the due diligence in educating their child about the deen. Perhaps they were raised in a very harsh, hostile, vitriolic environment where it was difficult for them to hold on to the deen. For one reason or another, there's a number of born Muslims who have taken on certain behaviors, certain habits that is contradictory either to principle or to the letter of the law, so to speak, of our deen. And a number of them have that same kind of eureka moment where it's like, okay, you know what? I got to be real with myself. I got to stop doing X, Y, and Z. And so they do look for advice rather than just perspective. And, a number of them come to those of us who reverted because, once again, we've had to do that critical self-inventory. I think the other reason why either they do come to reverts for that advice and hikmah, or why they should, if they haven't already, is those of us who reverted, and I don't speak for every revert, but a number of us know the importance of not being condescending. Now, I'm going to kind of break down this term. Whether it was when I was on the college campus, or whether, on like social media, more and more Muslims are using social media, especially, believe it or not, a lot of the adults. We tend to kind of, and I don't like this necessarily, but we tend to think, Muslims on social media, oh, it must be all the Gen Z, iGen, generation, where it's just like, young teens on. No. You want to see quarreling, argumentation, fitna on social media. Don't worry, a lot of the older folks do it. Anyways, so, whether I'm on the college campus or whether I'm in the masjid or on social media, you'll see you'll see statements such as XY person, XY, people, or Muslims are judgmental. Now, I think it's very important for us. We need to be very cognizant of the language we use. Words have meanings, and we need to pick words wisely. Oftentimes, when I've talked to those people, I end up finding out that it's not necessarily that, oh, they're making judgments of, things that have been done or things that have been said, or who they should, who should they be friends with and not friends with. What they mean is XY person, people, or Muslims are condescending. Condescension in the English language, being condescending, the meaning is that not only do you think that you are superior to other people, but your behaviors, your word choice, and how you speak to them, it's as if you're reminding them that they are beneath you. And so those of us who reverted to Islam, we really know the impact that condescension has. And so we tend, when we're delivering our Naseeha, roughly translating in English to advice, when we deliver our Naseeha, we're doing so in a way that is not condescending. I think for some people, it is just a lack of awareness, a lack of emotional intelligence, social intelligence. Because I've encountered people who have come off as condescending, but once again, when you have further conversations, you realize they're just not realizing that they're coming off that way. But for a number of us reverts, part of our Islam is in our akhlaq. Akhlaq roughly translating to mannerism, etiquette, how we behave, how we carry ourselves, our dignity. So we know right off the bat, we're telling ourselves in our heads, like, don't be condescending, be careful how you're explaining this to the person asking for advice. And so, and once again, I'm basing this off of things that have been said to me when people have come to me for advice, is you're giving me advice in a way that is not condescending, right? You always run the risk with condescension that you're taking away from the meat of the matter. You're taking away from like the core meaning of your Naseeha, and you're causing the other person to pay more attention to the fact that, like, wow, the way you're talking to me. I think those two things, the fact that a number of us reverts know the impact of condescension, and so we avoid it, and the fact that we have been through a lot of the same experiences, especially Muslims who may have a deficiency in their knowledge or practice, but they're trying to get better. They know that they can get more practical advice from us. I think these are really important. And I think in general, once again, going back to that term, critical self-inventory. Be critical, not be, critical, but, critique yourself in a constructive way. If you feel like you don't go to the masjid, I would encourage you to start going to the masjid. First and foremost, for the sake of Allah. That's first and foremost. But I also say this because we need to get out of our shells. And if we are one of those people who are whose worldview is constructed using social media, the best way to destroy that worldview is to actually get out into the community, immerse yourself. And you're going to find that the problems that you may see via social media or they're not as big as you think. B, we humans are social beings. We thrive off of that sense of belonging. And the best sense of belonging is to be among your fellow Muslims. And I'm gonna kind of get into this. I know this is maybe a little controversial, but the phenomenon by which you're speaking on behalf of groups. So, for example, reverts are oppressed, or reverts are treated very badly. Says XYZ person who has no close friendships with any reverts. Now, bear in mind, if you have one revert friend, it's the classical, like, oh, I have a, you know, XYZ friend, so that makes me not, quote unquote racist or whatever. Okay, if you only have 1, 2, or 3 friends, you're getting a small sample size. Get to know as many people as possible from all groups within the Muslim community. Start coming to the masjid and introduce yourself. Exchange names. Offer to sit down and just learn about the other person. A lot of the masjids are close to coffee shops and nice little diners. The power of breaking bread is important. Get to know as many people in the community from as many ethnic groups and backgrounds and all that. Get to know as many of them as possible. I'll have people, every now and then they'll chime in and say, Hamza, like, how do you know everybody? It's not because of any of my quote unquote identity markers. It's because I literally went out of my way and introduced myself. I got to know people. And when I say introduce yourself, look, Assalamu alaikum, that's a given. For those of you who do not know, there are certain rights that Muslims have over one another. One of them includes giving the salams. So that's a given. Go beyond that. Introduce yourself, get to know the person, find common interests, learn bits and pieces of their language. I mean, that was one of the things that helped me was I would, learn at least how to greet people in their own language. Kakose for the Bosnians, Nangadef to the Senegambians. That's Wolof. We have to increase our interactivity within the community, and I can say with a degree of certainty that those of us who reverted to Islam, we would love to sit down with you, get to know us. And if you need names, if you need, hey, Hamza, can you introduce me to so-and-so, or do you know any reverts that I can get to know, hit my line up. I'm glad to share. That way you become more realistically aware of our condition. You get to know the fact that us as reverts, we have a lot to offer, a lot of hikmah to offer. There are a number of honorable, dignified reverts and revert families in this community. Believe me. So I'm going to get to the second point that I wanted to expand on, which is culture in general. So, one of the questions, and I'm not remembering it verbatim, but one of the questions was touching on culture and Islam. And I want to start by making something clear. A number of us reverts have had some kind of experience where we were told something contradictory as it relates to like our culture upon becoming Muslim. For a number of us, it's the name changes. Now, bear in mind, a number of us, and we need to really set this record straight. A number of us willingly changed our names, willingly, and it wasn't because somebody said, "Oh, it's expected, like you must, it's obligatory." No, a number of us changed our names. I know for me, and for a number of other people, it's because typically Arabic names have some kind of translation or some kind of meaning behind it, whereas a lot of English names, they either have no meaning, or especially like last names, they were in pre-modern times, they were informing people of like your profession. Potter, foreman, carpenter. I mean, So once again, a number of us, we willingly changed our names. Have we had experiences where people have told us, like, I had one experience where a sister like told my aunt, who was not even Muslim, she told my aunt, like, it's prohibited to wear jeans. They weren't like tight jeans either. Do you run into that kind of stuff? Yes, we do. But realistically speaking, at the end of the day, I mean, we have a number of Muslims who, they are ignorant about their deen, especially when it comes to the fiqh. Fiqh translates to jurisprudence. Fiqh is kind of the structure by which we understand like the rules and regulations of our deen. The permissible, the obligatory, the disliked, they're prohibited. So they're ignorant about the fiqh. And they don't also realize, because this is very important in the Islamic tradition, there's a big emphasis on being careful on what you say and ensuring that you're not passing off misinformation as authoritative. What do I mean by that? That's like me saying, eating cheese is haram, and I'm saying it in an authoritative way, as in like I'm saying it implying that I know it is prohibited, right? Obviously in the Islamic tradition, there's very stern warning against doing that. Anyways, so yes, we have had those kind of experiences. But once again, there's this mental distortion called catastrophizing. I'm reading this book right now. It's very fascinating. But catastrophizing is the act of taking an experience and blowing it out of proportions, either by saying that it happens all the time, or that the severity of that experience is so much to where it's almost life-threatening, right? It's not a catastrophe that so-and-so had told me that jeans are haram. Look, I can go get my knowledge from somebody who's actually qualified in giving me that knowledge. I'm not going to get hung up because, some brother or sister who probably has not read a book of fiqh is going to tell me something and pretend that it's like that's the law. Look, let's take a step back. And that's the thing, is a number of us reverts have run into that kind of situation. But once again, we're very realistic, because even whether it was Christianity or Buddhism or agnostic, or atheism, where we came from before, guess what? You got the same people. hell, right now, the vaccines are, going to help the government track you. All those kind of conspiracies and hoaxes and stuff. Certain people will talk on them as if they are truth. Look, Yani, we've been through those experiences. A number of us, I'm not going to say everybody, a number of us know not to catastrophize those experiences. But I brought up something during the panel discussion. So there are a number of maxims that helped the Muslim scholars in the classical period develop the fiqh that we have today. Maxims in English, this is kind of a tough word to explain. Maxims are general statements by which you build rules and laws from them. So I brought up one of the maxims that helped develop Islamic fiqh, and there's multiple translations, kind of multiple wordings. One of them is that custom is given consideration. And I didn't go into too much detail, but this maxim, as well as other, parts of our Islamic law, this maxim is what gave Islam the ability to operate across cultures, across ethnic groups, across their various customs. So this maxim is basically explaining that culture, the way people have always done things, the way people, behave, the way people make decisions, their customs are given consideration, and provided that they're not directly contradicting the Quran and Sunnah and the clear prohibitions, go ahead and keep your way, keep those customs that don't contradict. And I think we don't do enough justice in illustrating that the Islamic world is probably one of the most diverse groups, one of the not groups, but one of the most diverse settings, because Islam didn't come in to create a homogenous culture or homogenous people. Whether you're going to, Senegal, whether you're going to Somalia, whether you're going to Egypt, whether you're going to, Pakistan, Bosnia, Albania, Indonesia, Malaysia, people dress different. They behave with differences among them. They speak different languages. Islam did not come in to homogenize this entire, world. And that people have to understand that was intentional by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have our different customs and we keep those different customs. People have specific values that are emphasized over others, and so long as those values are not contradictory to the deen, keep them. Going back to the example, like my mom's side of the family, in Appalachia, we have a very hard work ethic. We're very we have that, like, I can do for myself mentality. All that I keep. None of that's contradictory to the religion. In fact, believe it or not, the same thing is seen in the Sunnah, right? I'll give you another example. Growing up, I was among many of the Mauritanians here in Louisville. So Mauritania, it's a country in northwest Africa. I think it's south of Morocco, but it's like north of Senegal. So, growing up with a lot of the Mauritanians, I noticed that they tend to, the Mauritanians, they speak very loud, and they speak, very animated, right? Now, obviously, in certain cultures, it's, customary to kind of speak, in a meeker tone. But once again, for the Mauritanians, it's like, no. Be loud, be boisterous, be animated. That was seen as perfectly normal. Once again, none of, Islam didn't come in and say, okay, well, can't do that. No. Keep your customs, keep your behavior, so long as they don't clearly contradict the Deen and Sunnah. And bear in mind, the example about the Mauritanians, obviously there were certain settings where they did not speak loud and boisterous, like in the masjid. But like on the phone, for example, man, they were very animated. When I'm on the phone, I'm usually quiet. Once again, either or, it's fine. It's fine, I'll give one more example, because this is actually from a book that I just finished. I read it once before. I think it's called A Treasury of Sacred Maxims, and it's kind of a small primer, once again, on the maxims that were used to kind of develop the Sharia. So one of the examples that the author gives with regards to custom is given consideration. So there was a Bangladeshi expat. So he lived like in the United States or the UK or whatever for most of his life. But he was born in Bangladesh, and he wanted to come back and build a summer home. I think he was retiring or whatever. So, he comes and he contracts with a construction company. Now, in the culture of that province, I don't know if it was Bangladesh overall or if it was just in his province, it was customary to provide a lunch to the builders. Now, he lived most of his life away from Bangladesh. He was not acclimated to that. He didn't know that. So he just, he contracts them. They do their work, and he finds that they're visibly upset at the end of the project. And so they go to the local judge, and they were just like, he did not provide us this. It's customary we get that he provides a lunch, and he hasn't. And he's stepping forward. He's like, where does it say in the law that I have to? But once again, because in Islam custom is given consideration, the judges were like, you know what? You go ahead, and you're going to have to provide them lunch or compensation. And that was that. Once again, it's illustrating that in Islam, culture is, respected. Yes, there will be certain parts of the culture which you will have to abstain from because it's contradicting the Quran, the Sunnah, the Sharia. The example I used in the beginning of the recording, the fact that a lot of my folks out in Eastern Kentucky tended to cuss in general conversation too. I don't mean like when they were just irate. In general conversation, it's coarse language. Okay, I can't say, "Whoa, that's my custom." No. If the custom contradicts the Quran and Sunnah, okay, you're going to have to leave that specific custom out. That's the other thing. It's not a all or nothing. It's if a specific custom contradicts. So I can still hold on to like the hard work ethic values, but I'm going to have to abstain from that specific custom. For example, it's customary to go fishing. There's nothing in the Quran and Sunnah that says you can't go fishing, right? So keep that. But if something's contradicting the Quran, the Sunnah, the Sharia, okay, look, you're going to have to leave it off. And once again, when I say leave it off, you may not be able to do it cold turkey, but make the conscientious effort that, you know what, I am going to change this behavior. I am going to remove this habit. I definitely appreciated that panel discussion. But like I said, with a lot of public speaking opportunities, there's always room for expansion, for further elaboration. I definitely hope that this kind of helped the listeners kind of understand the place that reverts have in this community. I have to reiterate that yes, we have all had bad experiences, but it's a mental distortion to catastrophize it and to say that like, oh, it has killed me, or oh, this is going to happen over and over and over. Just as I have had bad experiences, I would be lying before Allah if I claimed that I haven't had great experiences. And it's the great experiences that I'm always going to appreciate more. And it's the great experiences that sustain, I'm going to end with this point. So going back when I was talking about, culture and the fact that, yes, we have a number of Muslims who do spread misinformation. Perhaps they're not spreading that misinformation with like a malicious intent. But we definitely have to be careful on what we speak on. And we have to clarify, I think, that whenever we speak on a matter, if we're not an authority on that matter, let's make it clear, like, I am not saying such and such with authority, or authoritatively, How can we better equip ourselves to deal with situations where people are speaking ignorantly, and especially people who are speaking ignorantly but expecting that it be treated authoritatively? One of the things that helped me when I was younger, so I was very introverted when I was younger, believe it or not, and I actually found that the number of books that I read and the breadth of the topics helped equip me when dealing with, people passing, ignorant judgment, or, telling me, oh, this is allowed or this is not allowed, when it's actually the opposite. There's a lot of great books out there. And I mean, you're going to have to read beyond just opening the Quran and reading it. Let me make it clear. It's very important that you read the Quran. Read it for yourself. Read with tadabbur. Read with understanding, where you're trying to understand the Quran clearly. However, we have tafsirs. We have books on fiqh. We have, and maybe this wasn't the case 10 or 20 years ago, but our access to English translated material is a lot greater now. There are a number of classically trained translators who are translating from Arabic to English. One person's name that comes to mind immediately is Ustad Musa Ferber, Furber. He's translating a lot. Imam Dawood Walid in Michigan has done a number of translations. We have access now to more English material. Now, I'm going to say this with clarification. It is important to learn the Arabic language, because once again, learning the Arabic language is going to unlock a lot more access. But once again, realistic advice. It's going to take a while to learn Arabic. In the meantime, we do have more access to English translated material. And these are English translations of like classical scholars' work. The second piece of advice is we have a number of scholars here in the United States. I know that some people tend to pretend that we don't, but we do. Alhamdulillah. We have a number of scholars here in the United States that are upon, the correct teachings of Orthodox Islam. I'll list a few. This is not an exhaustive list, obviously. And it's a mix of Muslim reverts who are scholars and, Arab or Pakistani or other scholars. So, Imam Dawood Walid, Hamza Yusuf, Zaid Shakir, Aisha Prime, Yasser Qadi, Sharid Muhammad, and Abdul Hakim Murad. I recommend Abdul Hakim Murad. He is based in Britain, but he's tackling a lot of the problematic ideologies that are coming that's coming to the forefront today. Imam Abdullah Hamid Ali, Imam Mark Manley, like I said, this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are people that I can think of right off the back. Shadi al-Masri, Mobeen Vaid. There's a number of them. But anyways, the reason I recommend these scholars is because they're going to be a lot more straightforward about certain phenomenon that is affecting Muslims here in the United States as opposed to Muslims across the Atlantic. The third piece of advice that I have is it's that coming back together. Reintegrate yourself in the community. Start coming to the masjid more. Because here's the thing. We rely on social media a lot more nowadays. And social media is not going to fill that sense of belonging that in-person interactions do. And it's always good for peace of mind to meet more people, because the more people you meet, the more you're going to be able to have those great experiences that help you as a Muslim, where you can confidently tell yourself that I have a community that I belong to. I have people that I can rely on. I have people that I can come to with questions. It's that exchange that really, really helps bring out the best in you. And once again, don't just befriend people of your ethnic group or your race, but befriend other people from across the community. We have a very diverse community, alhamdulillah. And so, once again, as people have gotten older, that uniting language, that uniting functional language, which is English, more and more people speak that language. And so now we are able to connect more. But I won't go any further. I'll go ahead and end that there. Honestly, if you have any questions, whether it's questions, about being a revert, whether it's, hey, I want to meet new brothers or new sisters in the community, can you kind of help, build that bridge? I'm happy to do so. Wallahi. And don't be afraid to ask, to ask what led me to Islam, or what has helped me continue as a Muslim. I think we got to get out of that funk where it's like, oh, I'm too afraid to ask questions. Ask questions, because I mean it. I know, especially for the older, the old heads, as we say in English slang, the old heads, they love people coming to them for advice. Not in so I can pat myself on the back, but it's like, because I have something to offer. I'm just looking for somebody to offer it to. Anyways, Jazakallah khairan. Thank you for listening to Ihya 502. Once again, all I ask is that you share with other people in the community. I know that Ramadan's coming around. Perhaps if you're one of those people that feels like, I should be leaving off, listening to music, for example, guess what? Tune into a podcast. If you want to hop on Ihya 502, if you want to break down some discussion with me, I'm always open to having new guests on. Without further ado, though, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi barakatuh.